Hello everyone, thank you so much for coming out to the studio today. I'm Stephen Cooley, and in this episode we're going to practice painting crashing ocean waves onto some kind of a coastline. Really good to learn how to do. Let's get into it.
Okay, we are beginning. So I have my turpentine jar open and I'm mixing in some burnt sienna with that turpentine and I'm applying it to the canvas. And I'm basically adding in that turpentine because it will make this process go really quick. The paint will dry super quick because we're using oils, and oils can take a while to dry. So the turpentine will help it dry. And if you're wondering what I'm doing, I am toning the background or creating a toned ground, as it's called. Basically, what this does is I'm painting the entire canvas one color. And I'm choosing that sienna brown because it will do a couple of things for me. It will give the painting a overall more professional look when I'm done, and it actually helps me judge color really well. Because when you have just a bright white canvas and you start painting on it, it can play tricks with your eyes where like you might be using a light gray, but you put it right on the white canvas and it looks really, really dark, when in fact it isn't. So this brown will help me judge the color really well. And you can see I am using some more of that brown color and I'm creating my sketch for the painting. And you know the process that I go through to create a composition. I sketched this one out beforehand on paper, and then I have my paper actually attached to the easel above the painting. So I'm looking at that and I'm just basically transferring the sketch to the canvas. And now I am putting in the background. And again, I want to work from as far back as I can get, which in this case is the sky, and then work forward in the painting. So that's what we're doing. I'm putting in a gray sky, and then now I'm doing, working a little bit closer, which is going to be the faraway sea in the background there. And I'm just using a blue for that. And I am beginning what's called the block-in stage, and that's when you cover the entire canvas with paint. I know I already covered it with the brown paint to tone it, but what I mean by covering the canvas with paint, that's when I get all of my main colors established. So that's what I'm doing here. I am putting in blue, a little bit of a darker blue there, kind of mixed with some brown, because right in that particular spot that I was just working on, I want that darker color to be a part of a rock that is underwater, but it's a little bit closer to the surface. So that's what those darker patches are going to end up being. And we're just working on finishing our block in after toning the canvas. But also, from what I've read, and I've seen a lot of other artists do this toning, but from what I've read is it actually helps you save a lot of time because it really makes the color show up really well, so you can pinpoint it early on and get it exactly the way you want it, so that it saves a lot of time that you would have spent trying to figure out, getting the color just right. And now I'm working on putting in those rocks. And for that, I'm using a very dark brown, probably like a burnt umber, I would imagine. And I'm making sure to keep the I'm making sure to keep the paint very thin at this early stage in the painting, because I don't want to end up with a lot of mud later on, which it tends to happen when you add too much paint too quickly. It just starts to build up on itself and keep mixing with paint that you put on it. And it just gets really messy. It's something you want to avoid. And you can do that really easily by, like I said, starting off with thinner layers of paint. You can see I'm putting in some green up there. That's because for this painting, I really looked up a lot of reference photos for this that were mostly in like islands in the North Atlantic Ocean, kind of like Scotland, Ireland, the Faroe Islands, where the rock is, is darker, and there is a layer of really bright green grass on the top, and that's kind of what I'm going for in this painting. And you might almost imagine, as I start to darken the sky a little bit more there, that there is a storm kind of, or maybe some rain or something creeping up in the background. You can see there I'm darkening the sky just a little bit more to create kind of that illusion of maybe a building storm in the background. And the light source, I kind of went back and forth with some different ideas of where the light was coming from, but eventually I settled on the light coming in from the top right-hand corner there. Doing seascapes are so fun because I love working with water. I love how water, how it reacts when it moves against rocks like that in coastline. And so it's really fun planning it out and practicing water. You can see I added in another rock there coming up out of the surf. But if you had asked me, how do you do that? How do you make the rock look like that? How do you paint waves? How do you get it right? My biggest thing that I would tell people is watch others paint. That is how I mostly learned how to paint myself, is just by watching others do it. I'm subscribed to lots of other painting channels, and I just glean information by simply watching them do it. I love watching time lapses. I love watching people paint with acrylic, with oils. You learn so much by seeing it done right in front of your face. And that's what I would say to you guys if you want to learn how to paint better, is just spend time watching others do it. There's people that I'll watch that will have like half an hour videos or so of them just painting a picture from start to finish, and I love to just sit down and maybe get a snack and watch them paint, because you pick up on things that you would not really pick up on as well if somebody just told you how to do it. You learn so much quicker, I think, when you see it done. And so that's kind of what I want to bring you guys through my videos here, is you can just watch me learn how to paint, because that's what I'm doing. I'm painting each painting, and when I complete each new painting, I'm learning something new. I'm adding another tool to my toolbox of painting. And when you guys watch me do it, you are joining in on my learning as well. So that's the benefit of watching others paint like this. You can see I'm darkening the sky even a little bit more. I remember doing that a lot because I wanted the sky to stand out from the water, just to not blend in, I guess, with the water is what I'm saying. So I made it more of a gray, whereas the water itself is more of a blue. And I did that by adding in probably a little bit more greens and browns and different colors than I would choose to use in the water into the sky color, just slightly, just to make it a little bit different color than the water. And here you can see I'm shaping the rock now, and I'm doing that by adding lighter browns against the darker browns. And you see I have the paintbrush that I have is more of a I don't know what it's called, but it's got that angle to it, kind of that square side angle, where it's really good for using to shape rocks, because you get that square edge that you can really use to your advantage in shaping those rocks. You can see I'm adding in some green as well with the same type of brush. Adding in some highlights just to give the rock more shape. And now you can see I have the rocks mainly the way I want them, and I'm starting to add some shapes into the water, some highlights. And I'm doing that by taking a very light blue. I'm just adding in those highlights. And that will really develop your water when you do that. The highlights really make the water stand out. And you notice as well that I don't have any white in my water at all. It's just mainly blue with some greens in there, and I'm gonna save using the light blue and the white until the very end. Those are gonna be for the highlights, because if I make the water too light at this stage in the painting, you won't have the highlights show up as well, because I can't get it any brighter than white. And if the water's white, you're not going to see the highlights. So I'm reserving that really bright blue and white until the end for the highlights. So that's something to keep in mind as well when you're doing water. And right at this point, you notice that the water on that farthest down rock actually looks like it's moving towards the incoming wave, whereas right above it, the water is splashing up against the shore. And I noticed that later on. That's something to remember, because that's a discrepancy that we don't want in our painting, because it shows a contradiction in the movement of the water. I eventually ended up changing that, and you'll see how I do that later on. But you want the water all to be moving one way, because if it doesn't, then it's contradicting itself. And it won't look realistic, because you'll never see that happen, in real life, in nature. So, yeah, I wanted to definitely change that. But I'm just adding in highlights here and there, also adding in shadows with darker blue, and that will develop your water really well just by looking at a reference photo maybe, and then building shadow and highlights together so that you get that nice water movement. And that's just what I'm doing here. Putting in some more highlights. Oh, it's so fun to do water. It really is a lot of fun. Still putting in those highlights. And I believe this is the point in the painting that I noticed, or at least, yep, still putting in highlights, but it was right around this point that I noticed that the wave was not right. The wave was crashing up on the beach, but the rock right below it, the farthest down rock, like I said, it had the water flowing the opposite direction. So you can see I was like, I want to keep the water flowing around that farthest down rock the way it's flowing. So I decided to just put sky over that wave that's splashing up, the first one there. Just take it away and have the water flowing backwards, like the wave has already broke and now it's spilling back down into the ocean. And that actually ended up working to my advantage in this painting, because you notice that you're looking sort of at an angle down the coast, and the waves are coming in at an angle in such a way where the wave is going to hit those first rocks, splash up first, and then come down as the rest of it is splashing up further down along the rock. So you get a a little glimpse of how the water is coming in and hitting the coastline there. And here I'm just highlighting the rocks and the coastline with some grass and developing the rocks a little bit more. But yeah, I liked the way it turned out a little bit better because it shows the timing of the water. The waves are hitting the first rocks first, then coming down, and then the wave, that same wall of waves is hitting farther down and splashing up after that. And I'm just putting in some finishing touches here. I remember thinking too, at this point, I was like, okay, we're done basically with the painting. But as I was showing like my sister, a couple people, I was looking at it and I was like, it's funny how I notice things right after I show people. Probably because I'm a little bit more critical with myself when I'm showing people. Then I notice it then after I thought it was finished, as opposed to noticing it before I officially finish. But yeah, I noticed as I was showing her the painting that there wasn't enough contrast between the water and the rock. It was kind of, the rocks weren't dark enough and the water wasn't light enough, so it just kind of, it looked too busy and nothing really was distinct, and it kind of was all just coming at your eye all at once. So I figured out that the simple fix is simply just to make the water lighter and the rocks darker. And it ended up working out perfectly to my reference photos, because the reference photos that I had, they really brought that out and showed that as well. The water, when it's crashing up like that, is a lot lighter because it's surf and it's more white looking. And the rocks in the part of the world that I'm going for this painting are darker anyway, so all I had to do was come back to it the next day, and you can see me here making the water lighter. And the paint had already kind of dried a little bit to where I could take my brush with some linseed oil mixed in, and I just applied it lightly, kind of as a wash over the water. And it really had the effect that I wanted. And it didn't take away the details that I had already put into it. It just kind of made the whole thing look a little bit brighter. And then it worked as well the same way with the rock. I just took a little bit of that linseed oil and mixed it with some black, and I just did a dark wash over the rock. And that was good. I like that. And you can see finishing touches, I'm adding in some sun rays from our light source, and it's shining through the breaking waves in the background there. That's why it looks a lot lighter where the light is shining through it. And we're done. Like it. Okay, finished.
Well, that painting was really fun to do, I'll have to say. And I think if I was to boil it down to one main thing that we can learn, that's the most important thing to take away from this video, would definitely be create contrast between the waves and the rock. When you do that, it really helps the painting pop and stand out. So thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, God bless you guys.